Hello, welcome to The Jungle. I'm your host, Amberly Lobo. Today, we are getting a masterclass on how to create something from nothing. Yappy Group is a multi-million-dollar tech startup that was created by a guy in his garage in Perth from basically nothing. Today, Yappy has secured billions of dollars in contracts for its clients and recently partnered with Microsoft. We're going to hear about how he did it, plus he's going to share tips on decision-making, goal setting, morning routines, journaling, and so much more. Welcome to The Jungle, Kohen Grogan.
Welcome to the jungle with Amberly Lobo. Welcome to the jungle.
Are you ready?
Almost.
Okay, you let me know.
I just need to do my crazy ritual first.
Okay, yeah, you go for it.
I'm joking.
Kohen Grogan, welcome to The Jungle.
Thanks for having me.
I am so excited for this because you are living proof that you can have whatever you want as long as you want it more than anything else and you're willing to put in the work, because you have created this multi-million-dollar tech startup out of your garage in Perth with basically nothing. So today we're going to talk about how you did it. So thank you so much for joining us.
Pleasure. Thanks for having me.
No, it's great to have you here. So let's start with uni. You went in and studied communications, double major in PR and advertising.
Yeah.
And this is where you sort of took an interest in social media.
Yeah, so it's interesting. So the reason I picked a Bachelor of Comms was because I had no idea what I actually wanted to do. And there was quite a lot of breadth in that, and you could study different disciplines. I was interested in business. I was interested in communications, in all sorts of things, and technology as well. And I really started to get fascinated with things like social media, purely because, I started to figure out what the strategies were for the Democrats and things. Again, I'm not all that political, but I saw the power of what this could do. In that instance, it was about getting younger cohorts of voters. And I just thought, wow, this is really interesting. And that whole communication and technology vein is something I really doubled down on and focused on a lot, because I could see that it was disrupting pretty much every industry, and it excited me. So yeah, everyone thought I was a bit of a tool.
Because this was early social media.
It's very
days.
early.
This is like 07, 06?
Yeah. Around that kind of time. It was really fascinating just seeing all these different potential use cases and how people were using it. And it really has transformed a whole heap of different industries, like communication and technology combined. So yeah, everyone thought I was a tool, but I thought there was going to be something coming from that, and so I really doubled down. Yeah, and here we are. Yeah.
Well, so after uni, you got a job as a PhD research assistant, and you're also consulting lots of big brands. It seems like your cart was pretty full. So at what point did you start thinking of maybe doing your own thing?
That's an interesting one. So I found the PhD research assistant work really interesting. So essentially what I was doing was studying generative audiences in the music and tourism industries. Two industries I was really interested in, particularly music, and analysing the disruption of network effects and all this kind of stuff on the business model. Like in music, you had peer-to-peer sharing, BitTorrents, which flipped the music business completely on its head. And it was all driven by technology and communication. And then travel and tourism, you had, all sorts of crazy stuff happening. Like you had online travel agents and peer review sites and all this stuff that was very new. And so I got into, after studying, and, I knew there was something huge coming from a technological point of view, which, we're now in. But I also knew that technology, communication mixed with technology, was going to disrupt pretty much every market. So I got into consulting. I was traveling around lots of different locations all around the world as a subject matter expert. And, every day I was just asking or being asked this question, which is a pretty abstract question. And it's like, well, what's the return on investment on social intelligence and big data? It was really long, and it meant nothing to most people, but it meant everything to me. And then I had to make a pretty big decision because, ultimately, I knew that technology could solve that. and we've evolved considerably. Like we turned 12 in March this year, so 2024. Yeah, we're 12. So it's been a long journey to get to where we are now and with what's happening. But yeah, it was it was a tough decision to make that call to quit everything.
Yeah.
And start this company, Yappy
To
Group.
answer that question.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, yeah. And that's the whole purpose of starting it, was to ask that question and answer it, hopefully. And then also the whole reason I went into business is because I want to make a big lasting impact. So
you've got this idea to maybe start your own business, and around the same time you also get this pretty sexy offer from to go head up, was it a tech startup in the Silicon Valley? Like, what was that?
Yeah, they were actually like a scale up at that stage. So, they'd done a heap of VC fundraising and they were going, like they were up and about, and they offered me an incredible job that was difficult to turn down. So, yeah, I was young and I basically got offered the opportunity to head up their APAC office over in Sydney. Flights booked, never been to San Francisco, really wanted to go there and check it out. There are a lot of pros for me to take the job.
So how did you decide, given that sounds so good, to go with gambling on yourself and starting your own thing?
I drove to the beach. Like, I love getting to the ocean when thinking about particularly big things, because there's no distraction. You just look out at the ocean and it's almost therapeutic, but it gives you that ability to focus. So I drove my crappy car far north. I was in Perth at the time, and basically car broke down. Everything that could possibly go wrong went wrong. Phone was flat, and rather than look at that as an obligation and be frustrated and annoyed about it, I went, hey, you know what? This is actually an opportunity. Like, now I have the time to stop, focus, and think about this decision. So I walked down to the beach with a stick, and I just drew a line in the sand and wrote pros and cons. And
you look like a crazy person.
Oh, of course. Like, there weren't many people around because I was pretty far north. But yeah, I would have looked like a lunatic, and I am a bit different, so that's cool. I'm down with that.
Was it equally balanced out, the pros and cons? Do you remember what it was because that other offer sounds incredible.
Yeah, it was. It was
Okay.
incredible.
Like, what was it about starting your own thing that made you go with that?
The main thing for me that stood out was I didn't want to wake up as a 90-year-old if I get to 90 and go, hey, what if I gave that a crack? And, would I have solved that problem or not? That was really the main decision-making moment when I was like, I don't want to wake up and wonder what if. I want to find out.
Life is a jungle.
So you're on the beach, you've decided to go all in on starting your own thing. I'm sure you got an incredible tan at this point because you've been there for a while. Yeah. You drive back to Perth, and in 2012 you start Yappy. Now back in 2012, just as background for listeners, Yappy was like this software that enabled businesses to create these interactive, engaging experiences with their customers. And it's sort of evolved into more business to business focus, which we'll talk about later. But first I want to know, how do you just start like a tech startup? Like, what does that even involve? Because I know it's hard enough on its own. And it's hard enough when you have capital, but you didn't have that much money, did you?
No, I had $2,000, and $200 of that was left to me by my grandma.
Yeah.
So actually, back to the decision-making process as well, like, my grandma passed and we were real tight, and she was an amazing woman. She had over 20 grandkids and put afternoon tea on for us and kids after school. I grew up in the country originally, and, that also was a moment in time where I was like, I want to make this decision. So there was that. But yeah, it was difficult, right? Like, I had a laptop. I didn't have a lot of stuff. And I converted the garage into, an office. So I put a sign up, petitioning, flooring, made it look and feel like an office so that when I was doing Skype calls and stuff, because there was no Zoom or anything like that back then, most of my meetings were run with people in different countries or different parts of this country.
Oh, so you kind of make it look like you weren't in your garage.
Yeah, but, if people asked me, I would have told them, but no one ever really asked. And I got liberated in some degrees. You got to make the best of a shitty situation, and being in a garage in Perth in summer is not fun.
Oh, no. Yeah, no.
It's also not fun in winter. So there's a little period of time when it's okay. But, you know, everyone's been liberated with this now. So when COVID hit, you know, I'm sure everyone out there either thought about it or did it. Like, do a meeting, you know, with no pants on, you know, looking professional up top and not really caring, you know, elsewhere. And so I got to experience that before COVID.
Oh, you
so
were ahead of the game.
Ahead of the game.
When COVID happened, you're like, I've got this.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, that is so cool. Like, how much work was involved in those early days getting it?
Oh, man, so much. Like, when we say early days, like, I ended up getting out of the garage after about 15 months or so. But
that's pretty quick.
Yeah,
pretty good,
there's a lot of things that kind of happened that made that possible. But, yeah, it was a lot of work. Like, I had a look actually a little while back at my, you know, like, what I was paying myself and stuff. And I had to pay rent, eat, every dollar I could put back into the company I would. I think I was paying myself like under 30 grand a year for the first 5 or 6 years. It was tough. And I had to survive and eat and, you know, and live. So I sacrificed a lot, you know, like I was, in some instances, I was pulling all-nighters quite often. Like, it was not healthy. And as a result of that, like, you know, my connection with friends and family dropped away a bit. And yeah, I mean, I'd sleep on the floor in the office some nights and just keep going. Everyone else got paid well, by the way.
Okay.
Just not myself.
Yeah, I can imagine. I know, like, a lot of people, like, especially in that early build phase, it can be so hard, like, getting your customers, getting the funding, wondering if your idea is even going to work. Yeah. Did you have moments in those early months or even in that first 15 months where you're like, I should have took the APAC thing, like, what am I thinking? Or were you underway enough?
You know what? I'm a pretty strange creature because once I've set my mind on something, it's very hard for me to deviate away from it.
Yeah.
So, I mean, yeah, there were times when, you know, you're like, man, I could just go get even a normal job and be better off. But I wasn't going to solve the question I wanted to solve if I did that. And so that kind of kept me there. And then over time, my vision for the company and what we were aiming to achieve just got clearer and clearer and clearer. And having a clear vision makes decision-making super simple.
Oh, so much easier.
Yeah, it's black and white. Will that help us get to the vision, yes or no?
Yeah.
No, it won't. I'm not going to waste my time on it then.
Well, I want to pause on the story and talk about Richard Branson for a moment, because when you're grinding away in your garage, you had his 7 keys to success up on your wall, and one day a friend walks in and tells you he's going to be coming to Perth, and this like triggered a series of crazy events. Yeah. Run us through it.
Yeah, so my friend steps into the garage and, you know, tells me about this. It's like, wow, I didn't know about that. So I used my grandma's $200. By this stage, I was just over a year into the garage. So I get to this conference, we're backstage, and yeah, it's pretty funny. Like, I had this team of people around me. I was like, mate, you get the microphone. How about you give it to me? You get it? $300 for you. Give it to me. So I had this like cohort of people that knew I really wanted the microphone more than them. None of them really knew why, but they could just tell that I really, really wanted it. And it finishes up and I didn't get the microphone.
No.
And then I remembered that he lost a bet with Anthony Fernandez, who's the owner of AirAsia. Basically, both of them had Formula One teams, and whoever's team finished worse than the other had to dress as an air hostess on the competitor's flight. And it turned out that they were, out of all places on the planet, flying out of Perth the very next day. So I start writing this 2-page letter to Richard Branson with my hand, and it's horrible. So I type it out and yeah, like I put them in I made 3 copies and I put them in bright yellow envelopes so they'd stand out, and I wrote to Sir Richard Branson on the front of each of them. There wasn't a lot of time left, you know, like this was like in the evening and the flight was leaving early in the morning the next day. So I was just like, I got to get on this thing. And yeah, it was mental. Like we were kind of like mid-air, and I was sitting sort of near the front where there's a galley, sort of like midway through the plane. And Branson starts like walking down the aisle, and I'm like, holy shit, he's right there. That is crazy. And I knew that he'd go to the back of the plane,
Oh gosh.
come back up, right?
Yeah.
And then he'd sit at the front, job done. Like, I knew I only had one other chance to make this happen. So I got up with one of these copies of this letter, and I stand in the galley.
Like that's in the aisle. That
Yeah.
little gap. Yeah.
Yeah. You know, like they prepare food and tea and
yeah.
stuff there, and I'm just standing there like a spook with this letter like right next to me. It was crazy. And then he starts walking away.
And you didn't give him the letter?
No, still got the letter.
Oh no.
Yeah. And I was like, oh man, what an idiot. And so like I started yelling his name.
No.
I was like, Richard! Richard! Like
On the plane?
Yeah, like
and
a
it was
lunatic.
in the air?
In the air.
Oh no.
Yeah, like an absolute lunatic. And he walks back towards me, he's standing right there in front of me. And I'm like, oh, hey, Richard, I was meant to give you this letter. And so I give him this letter, and he puts it in his little AirAsia bag, says thank you very much, and prances off. And I was like, wicked. I'm so glad I did that.
Yeah.
I go sit down, and then I just put my headphones back on because I had so much work to do.
Yeah.
I technically shouldn't have really even gone on that flight. And I'm typing away, and then I feel this tap on my shoulder.
Yeah.
And I was like, I thought it'd be Richard. But it was an air hostess, and she was like, hey, are you Kohen Grogan?
Yeah.
And I'm like, yeah. She's like, can you come with me? And I was like, oh man, this could be really good or really bad. Like maybe I'm in trouble for yelling at Richard or something. And I'll never forget it. Like I'm walking to the front of the plane, and there's this red curtain opens up, and there's Sir Richard Branson in an empty seat, and I got to spend like 30 minutes with him talking about, it was wild. I told him about my plans for philanthropy and to give back, and he basically said, well, why don't you just start doing that now?
Yeah.
Obviously not realising I had nothing. But I listened to it and completely changed heaps of things in the business as a result of this conversation. Got involved in building and making child-friendly schools in Cambodia, Laos, Indonesia, and I've been involved in 15 of those all up since that because he planted that seed, and I thought, you know what, if I can start making an impact now where I can, like...
Yeah. In a small way.
Yeah, now probably thousands of kids have been educated because of that.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
And what's wild is you still see him now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've seen him a couple of times, and
in the galley.
Yeah.
No.
Not in the galley, no.
You creeper.
I've been fortunate to meet him a few times. But yeah, this year I've been invited to Necker Island to spend time with him and some other entrepreneurs that
is actually crazy.
It is pretty crazy. Yeah, I'm pretty pumped about it. It's been a goal of mine for a while.
Life is a jungle.
Jumping back in the story,
Yeah.
So you've formed Yappy Group, you've met Richard Branson, you got your ideas, you've leveled up, I imagine, a lot of your goals at this time, and you guys are doing really well. Like, you're taking on all these big international clients like McDonald's, Thermomix, Pandora, but then in 2020, COVID hits. But what's interesting for you guys is because your software is all about creating these digital experiences between business and customers, on the outside it seems like this is a great thing because everyone's going online. But then you, in like a total plot twist, make this huge business decision which sort of goes in the opposite direction. Like, tell us about that.
So, secretively in the background, I was experimenting with a really cool, what I thought could be a great solution in solving long deal cycles in B2B and making an impact to large contracts and things. And it was a counterintuitive decision on the surface to most people to switch off 80% of your revenue.
What was it that gave you the confidence to make that decision?
Well, yeah, good question. So I've got a very clear vision, and that vision is the 29th of March 2029. We want our company to have a $1 billion US valuation, which is a unicorn valuation. The reason for that is because I'm setting up with my own wealth a philanthropic fund to give back in health, education, hunger and environment. And I want that by age 50 to have 1.5 billion US dollars in it, so that we can gift at least $75 million plus CPI for the rest of history. It's a big, hairy, audacious goal, but 5 years ago when I first started verbalizing that, how are we going to do that, right? It was big, but the funny thing is, 5 years into it, we're on track. I believe we can get there. In fact, I believe we could possibly go way beyond it. But back to how I made that decision was that clarity of vision, right? I knew that as much as in the shorter term, what we had built and what we were doing would go well, I didn't believe deep down that it would get us to that big, hairy, audacious goal. The global benchmark for how businesses communicate to win. I just didn't think we'd get there with that. So, I just started weaning some of the traditional stuff out over like a 6-year period to today. And then, ultimately just made the call and went, you know what? That's distracting us from how we're going to get there.
How important is it, not to split your focus and, realize what your goal is, be clear on the goal, and then align everything to that?
Yeah, it's super important. If you have split focus, you're highly unlikely, in my view, to get where you want to go. You can't have everything. And this is actually really interesting. There's this cool analogy. It's called 4 burners. Have you ever heard of that?
No.
So basically, we're a bottle of gas, right? We've only got so much energy in us. If you imagine a stovetop with 4 burners on top of it, you've got your career or business or that side of life. You've then got community, you've got family, and you've got personal. Family includes friends and stuff as well. What happens in life is everyone's gung ho on this thing called balance.
Oh yeah.
And the reality is shit happens in life, and sometimes because you've only got so much energy, you need to double down on some of those burners and you have to switch some off. So you'll find that a lot of people that are deemed successful in the way that the Western world deems successful, in fact probably the whole world, they've had to sacrifice a lot, and they're committed to 1 or 2 of those burners. And as a result, things fall off the wagon. They lose relationships, their families not as tight. All these kind of things happen because they double down in one area.
I think it's like seasons, isn't it? You'll go through a season of focusing on this, and then you'll come back and focus on that, and then you'll shift back into this.
100%. And, this is pretty personal stuff, but, my wife and I got married just before COVID hit, and we went through 4 consecutive miscarriages. Oh, wow. It was tough.
Yeah.
And then her auntie passed away amongst that. And then in the December of that same year, we lost my mother-in-law.
Oh my God, I'm so sorry.
Yeah, it was hard, man. It was such a shitty time. And as a result, right, to use the burner analogy, I had to switch some burners off. So my personal stuff completely went out the window, and I was conscious of it and knew that because I was focused on family and the business, because the business that I have is a lot of people's livelihoods. So they were the 2 areas I doubled down on. As a result, I got unhealthy, and I'm getting back on the health train now. But that's right. Too many people get focused on that whole balance notion. And the reality is, from my point of view anyway, there's periods of time where you're never going to have balance, and that's totally fine. You've just got to be conscious of it and make sure that you get that balance in other areas back when the time's right. I think too many people beat themselves up over that.
Yeah. I'm like that. I know sometimes this bucket's full, this one is empty, and I can see it. And so I can be kind to myself and be like, look, that's because you don't have any time for you're not investing into your community and friends right now. You feel a bit shit. But that's just I'm you'll get to it when you can get to it. And even sometimes just being aware of not being able to do something is good.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
Life is a jungle.
stop the podcast. I just wanted to hit pause for a second to thank sponsor of the show and friend of the show, American Apparel. I am an OG American Apparel fan, so it is so cool to have them on board. The brand is back and it has relaunched. If you're a fan of extreme comfort and just an all-round good fit, you need to get yourself into some of that American Apparel. They are also sustainable and ethically sourced, which we love. So what are you waiting for? Treat yourself today. Visit americanapparel.com.au. Okay, resume podcast. I want to talk to you about goal setting because you mentioned to get the unicorn valuation in 2029, which is such a cool big goal. How do you set your goals and how do you keep yourself accountable? Do you have any strategies you could share with us?
Yeah, I do. So over the years, I've had goal buddies and stuff.
Like a friend that you tell the goal to.
Yeah.
Oh, I like that.
Yeah. And they keep you accountable.
Yeah, me and Franz, the camera guy, do that.
Yeah, well, that's cool. That's rad.
Yeah.
But I guess it all comes down to, there's a lot of heavy lifting to be done in deep thought around what it is actually that you want out of life in each of those areas I spoke about. And EO, or the Entrepreneurs Organisation, really helped me have that kind of lens on life. So I can give a lot of credit to that organisation. Once you've got that real clear vision in each of those areas, like what you want family to look like, which includes friends, like what you want your career to look like, what you personally want to look like, and what community looks like to you, then you can start putting things in place. So we do this mad goal setting where I have a 20-year spreadsheet. Right?
Well, that's taking it to the next level.
Yeah, I break it down into 20 years. Where am I in 20 years? And some of the stuff I've articulated is on that, right? Yeah. Like the philanthropic fund being worth $1.5 billion so I can make X amount of impact, blah, blah, blah. It's not blah, blah, blah to me, but, to other people it might be. And so, I break it down, and it's hard work, right? To actually understand that is where you want to get to. But when you've done that hard work, you then commit to it, right? If you haven't done that hard work and you got wishy-washy goals, you're never going to do it. And so then it's paired back into 20 years, 10 years, 5 years, 3 years, 1 year, monthly.
And so then everything that you do will pipeline up to that.
Exactly.
Wow.
So it's a constant, that's the vision that I've got.
Yeah.
Is what I'm doing this month helping me get to the year, which helps me get to the 3 years, 5 years, 10 and 20 years.
Oh, so do you check in at the end of every month for your goals?
Yeah.
Well, that's amazing on all those areas of your life.
Yep.
When we caught up, you told me this cool practice that you do that I loved, and it's that you write a letter.
Oh, yeah.
Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, every year I write a letter to myself of basically what I've achieved and what life looks like in 12 months' time.
So this is at the end of the year. You're writing it for the next year.
Yeah, so once I've gone through that process, which is a couple of days' work, then I go, all right, well, I'm going to write a letter to myself in the present tense as to what life looks like for me right now.
Oh, so it'd be I'm doing this and this is happening and this is
Yeah. And you've referenced the goals that you kind of set because you've done the goal setting part of it as well.
Yeah.
And it's unreal, man. I reckon over 80% of that letter becomes reality for me.
And what do you do with the letter? Do you read it
throughout
the year?
It depends, right? So every morning, and this is, I've got this amazing mentor over in the States. He gave me this really cool process, which he calls 10-10-10. So you start off the day, every day, a minute, sitting at the end of your bed. First you kiss your wife or partner or whatever. Tell them you love them, even if they're asleep. And you sit at the end of your bed and you just think for 1 minute, what is my purpose for the day? Then you do this 10-10-10 thing, which is 10 minutes of gratitude.
And do you write it or you're saying
I don't write it.
Yeah.
I sit there and some days it's difficult to do 10 minutes of
10 minutes of gratitude is a lot.
Yeah. Wow, the sky's amazing today.
Yeah, I've often been I'm grateful for my coloured pens. I've really had to stretch.
Yeah.
Sometimes
it gets like that, hey? Yeah. And then the next part is reading something inspiring.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
So I've got a book of, it changes all the time, but at the moment I'm going through a book, which I can't remember the name of, but it's basically inspiring speeches that have changed the trajectory of history in the world.
Oh, yeah.
And so that really, gets me going. It won't get everyone going. And then the next part is just 10 minutes of reflection through journaling. But actually, another point as well, which I wouldn't mind touching on, is, for quite a long period of time in the business journey for me, I was trying to get good at my weaknesses, right? Get good at things that naturally I'll never be good at. And it's mental when you think about it. So most people do this as well. And I'm glad that I was kind of shown a different direction, because there's this really cool quote. In fact, I think it's from my mentor, which is, when you focus on your weaknesses, you rob yourself of your strengths.
Oh, that's so true.
You're spending so much of your energy trying to get good at shit you're never going to be good at,
Yeah.
that you don't actually get to double down and focus on your natural talents and the things that will put you on a whole different trajectory.
Yeah.
So, we, even as an organisation, like, we understand everyone's strengths through, like, Clifton Strengths and Gallup, and we figure out, like, collectively as a company where our strengths are. Why try and get good at stuff we're never going to be good at?
Yeah.
Let's double down here.
That's so
And
good.
it changes the game, hey. It improves confidence and all sorts of things, because you're actually empowered to work on the things you're good at, not the things that you're not good at that drain you.
It'd be cool to get a few practical tips for people listening that are maybe starting a business, on how to start and maybe how to grow a business.
Yeah, okay. I guess there's two ways to look at it. Like, you can find an existing business or type of business that you're passionate about that you think can be done better, or you can you can basically create something that doesn't exist. That's much more difficult, and you've basically got to just keep smashing different things together until, wow, that's something special. It takes a lot longer, and it's a lot harder. But I guess the first thing is, like, just don't even think about the business itself just yet. Like, think about what your actual plan is for you. And that's something I didn't do in the beginning. Everything I've created is for everyone else, right? Like, I want to give back and all that kind of thing, and that's a big part of who I am. I don't regret that at all, but that's part of what I want to get out of the business, right? So you've got to understand what you want to get out of it as well, because then you can have this decision-making matrix of, like, well, that's what I want to get out of it. I don't think that kind of business will actually allow for that, or it might make it harder, or you've really got to understand what it is you're trying to get out of it, because starting a business, starting anything, a lot of people go into it with the expectation that, like, be my own boss, do what I want kind of thing. The reality is that you've probably got to work about 10 times harder if you want to make it a success, because you've got to wear so many different hats now. Like, you've got to do legal, marketing, sales. You might have a small team to start with, or you might build up to one. Then you've got to do HR. Like, there's so many disciplines, finances that you need to understand. And again, it's that whole notion that I just spoke about, right? Quite often when you start something, you're not in a position to have all those hats filled because you don't have the capital to attract the resources required. So you're spending a lot of extra time and energy on stuff you're never going to be good at. That's the challenge. And so a lot of people go into starting something, and, business in particular, with the expectation that they can do what they want. And the reality is you can, but you won't be eating.
Yeah.
Like, if you just go do what you want whenever you want, you're not gonna get out of the business even a decent salary. Like, you have to work super hard.
What about a few pointers for growing a business? You've got this business, it's maybe hit a ceiling. Do you have any tips for people listening to take it to the next level?
Yeah, and it's all going to come back down to vision and stuff. So if you can clearly articulate, hey, I'm trying to get to this landmark or this thing, I've got no clue how to get there.
People will come
exactly
along the journey with you.
People will come and help.
Yeah.
So the key is that you need to really understand the destination that you're aiming to get to. And then you need to put that map out there and let people know, hey, here's where I'm aiming to get. Yeah.
Well, it's going to be so exciting to watch you over the next 2 years hit that March 29th, 2029 goal. For someone that's achieved so much, what do you define as success?
That's another good question. My definition of success is that what you've set out to do, you've done. And you've done that in a way that benefits everyone, not just yourself.
I love that. Where can people connect with you, connect with Yappy and follow you guys?
Yeah, cool. We're on LinkedIn, Yappy Group. And I'm Kohen Grogan, Kohen Grogan. You'll find me on LinkedIn. I'm the only one on the planet with the name spelt the way it is.
Oh, wow. There you go.
So it won't be hard to find me.
Facts.
Yeah, there you go. Facts, man.
Well, thank you so much. And last but not least, I always say life is a jungle. So have you got any parting Kohen Grogan wisdom for navigating the jungle of life?
You can do a lot with a little, thanks to my grandma. Like, you can. If you think differently and creatively, you can make almost anything happen.
That's so beautiful. That will be the 5 minutes that we use. Thank you so much for listening. You can find me on socials at Amberly Lobo, and for more information on the show, including all the show notes, visit amberlylobo.com. I'll see you next time, and remember, life is a jungle.